Hey everyone, Cody Hayes here, and I'd like to welcome you to the last of the lectures over the Catholic letters. In this case, we're going to look at the letter of Jude. And I mentioned how with 2nd and 3rd John and belonging to a liturgical tradition, I've never once heard second and at least to the best of my knowledge, I've never once heard 2nd and 3rd John read as part of the liturgy. The same is true with the letter of Jude. I've never once heard it read as part of the liturgy, and that may be because there's really not much to it in terms of substance. So look a little bit here with the author and the date. Traditionally, Jude is ascribed to Jude Thaddeus, who was the brother slash kinsman of Jesus. However, this is questioned by historians. I'm going to read briefly the opening here to the letter of Jude. Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James. Well, of course, which brother of James wasn't? He doesn't describe himself as a brother slash kinsman of Jesus. And Jude is shorthand for Judas, which was a common name back then and a popular name as it relates to Judas the Maccabean, who is the hero of the Maccabean revolt, which of course is the story that relates to Hanukkah. But also, if you want to factor in the author being the brother slash kinsman of Jesus, would Jude have been able to write a letter, because it does not mention any scribe, would he be able to write such a letter in the Greek that you have here for this particular letter? And most historians would say no. So arguably, whoever wrote this letter, we don't know for certain. At best, probably to say that it's anonymous. Historians generally date the letter of Jude to have been written about 100 to 125 CE/AD. So it's a little bit older than the second letter of Peter, and arguably a lot of the rhetoric that you find in Jude, you do find in Peter. So the author may have been taking some of that rhetoric that you find here. So look a little bit at the theme and the contents of the letter of Jude. The main theme behind the letter of Jude seems to be against those who are outside the Catholic Orthodox faith. So, of course, of the Christianities that we looked at one of the very first lectures, Catholic Orthodoxy, that's the form that won. And so all modern day Christians descend directly or indirectly from the Catholic Orthodox faith. And the losers were, of course, the Ebionites slash adoptionists and then the various forms of Gnosticism. So essentially, it would be obviously against those groups that Catholic Orthodoxy declared to be heretical. Well, who are these false teachers that are referenced in the letter of Jude, and what exactly did they teach? We honestly don't know. Jude didn't say who they were, and he didn't say what they were teaching. He basically calls them a bunch of names, and in many respects engages in ad hominem attacks. But more than likely, they would have been those that would have been adoptionists slash Ebionites or Gnostics, even though that's not explicitly stated in the text, but that is more than likely what it was that they were teaching. But essentially something that was not Catholic Orthodoxy, something outside the Catholic Orthodox faith. That for certain we can say. And what source is Jude using regarding the fight between the archangel Michael and the devil over the body of Moses? It's a very good question. Um, Origin of Alexandria, in his work on first principles, he references that Jude was using a text called the Ascension of Moses. But Origin more than likely made a mistake there, a typo, I guess you could say. He was probably referring to the Assumption of Moses. And the reason why I say that is because there is a work, a text called the Ascension of Moses, where Moses essentially ascends up into heaven or is taken up into heaven, I guess you could say, or has scenes of heaven by his own power, and he's there, observing, the heavenly realms. But this is done by his own power, whereas assumption would refer to, in this case, being taken up by a force that's stronger. Like, for example, it's officially a doctrine within the Catholic Church, but the Assumption of Mary, where Mary is taken up into heaven by God. It's not her own power doing it, God does it. And there is a document called the Assumption of Moses, the Testament of Moses, which takes place during the end of Moses's life and would subsequently, you could say, have a reference to his death. But the problem, though, is that within that document, which is also again referred to as the Testament of Moses, there's no fight over the body of Moses between Michael and the devil. Now, the chances are very good that if there was, it's been lost because the text does break off, I'm sorry. You you can go online, do a quick search for the Assumption of Moses in English, and you can find a copy of the text and you can read it for yourself. And there is the portion where the text breaks off in the middle of the story. So it's possible that Origen had, read the Assumption of Moses and saw exactly what Jude was talking about regarding this fight between Michael and the devil over the body of Moses, because he read Origen, in this case, the complete form. But we don't have the complete form, it's been lost. But it's also possible that maybe Jude was using a combination of texts. And maybe the Assumption of Moses was just one of them, if it was that one. Or it could have been a totally different text. We don't know for certain what source he was using, but those are guesses. Well, anyway, that's all that we have for the letter of Jude. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. Until then, take care.